These loans are unsecured personal loans. And if you look at all the obligations a consumer can have, mortgage, people don't want to default on. Auto, they got to drive to work. Cell phone, they need to get work and do the work, call their friends and family. So the bottom of the payment priority stack, even credit card people need, they want the rewards points, they want convenience, pay for things on credit card and Apple Pay. The first thing that people default on is unsecured personal loan. So SoFi is taking very conservative projections, they say, around 7 to 8% expected loss.
If you look at the numbers, what you've actually seen is that their charge-off ratio and their delinquencies have been increasing rapidly. If you were to look at, there's one nuance. Last quarter, they did a delinquent loan sale that, in a sense, transferred some of the NCOs away, which just really reduced the reported number. But I actually estimate what it would have looked like otherwise. If you look at their charge-off ratio in all of 2022, it was 1.86%. Their charge-off ratio in 2023 was 3.42% on fair value. It ended in the fourth quarter, I estimate 4.05%. And my estimate for the first quarter, that's the annualized write-offs in the quarter. And in the first quarter of 24, if I were to add back the defaulted loan sale, the late-stage delinquency loan sale, I estimate 4.91%. That's on fair value. So that is over 104 and change. So if you actually look at that on average principal, my estimate would actually be higher. Last quarter was about 5.34%. And if you look at their estimate in the fair value analysis, they're estimating 4.8%. And if you look through the details a little more, in the finer numbers in the queue, it seems like it's closer to 4.85, but that's on the fair value. So that actually comes out to just over 5% a year.
So you're seeing some realized annual default rates that are north of what management has been saying, which is on 4.8. But I also hear this number about 7 to 8% over the life of the loan. Can you distinguish between those two metrics?
What you're going to have, the duration of loans moves around a bit, but roughly speaking, on average, personal loans, your typical prime personal loan portfolio usually has a 1.5 year duration. If you had 5% average annualized charge-offs per year over 1.5 years, you'd be at roughly 7.5%.
Right. And just a quick definition. So duration is the weighted average expected cash flows. That's the way to think about duration. If I make a loan to someone and they agree to pay back in 10 years and they make one payment in 10 years and the duration on that loan is 10 years. If you take a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, because people refinance mortgages, or they used to when rates were lower, more quickly, even though the contractual duration was 30 years, the weighted average life of a mortgage was actually closer to 3 to 4 years. That's the definition of duration for those that are following. SoFi's average duration is 1.5 years.
And one thing they've said recently, just in the interest of is that some of the newer loans are slightly shorter duration. So the relationship between the 7 to 8% life of loan might be a little different. But if you took things a little bit of a step further, what you've also seen, and there's obviously some mixed components that play into this, is that the 90 plus delinquencies have increased fairly materially. And you've increased from the third quarter of 23 at 48 basis points, you increased to 56 basis points in the fourth quarter, and then 72 basis points in the first quarter of 24. If you took historical roll rates, based on my analysis at least, that would imply that your charge-off ratio should be north of 6%. And on fair value, and potentially north of 6.5% on principal in the second quarter. So which would be a fair amount above what they're estimating, which is roughly 5% a year.
So if I take that, so they've got this stated 7 to 8% life of loan loss. You're seeing 6% DQs, delinquency.
What you're seeing is 72 basis points. And if you looked at what that would imply based on the historical roll rate patterns, that would imply that the next quarter's charge-off rate should be north of 6%. So in order for 5% to be the right number, if they do end up at over 6%, they would have to end up below 6% at some point on the loan portfolio that they're analyzing.
So it looks like the 7 to 8% life of loan loss assumption will not be met, even though they've stated that.
I think there are a few things. Seems fairly clear, and they provided disclosures here, is that a big part of the 2022 and before vintages have underperformed on credit. They're fairly small, but if they're really driving the overall portfolio this much, my assumption is that they're underperforming by a lot. They provide some relative disclosures around how much better some of the recent vintages are performing versus the third quarter of 22 vintage. What we don't know is how much that those previous vintages are underperforming. In the sense, are they 50 to 100% over? And are they 20 or 30% better? Because that would still put them above. What we don't necessarily know is where they truly are. They've obviously reiterated the 7 to 8% target. But if you look at where they are, I didn't have credit getting this bad. I assumed that credit would deteriorate, but I didn't have them anywhere near this level of deterioration in my forecasts for many quarters leading up to this. So I think credit has been a negative surprise for me, at least.